episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms.
No. I'm sorry.
If it's written work, it's game.
Indeed.
Let's meet the panel.
Hello, I'm Larry.
Hey, I'm Austin.
Charlie.
And I'm Josh. And today we are going to be going over one of our favorite poets from the Beats era, Allen Ginsberg. Ready then. Charlie just finished watching a video, and he can't get a particular sound out of his head. Alrighty then.
It's a little penguin now. I'm gonna shut up.
Let's begin. Do you find Allen Ginsberg to be the face of the Beats movement? If so, why?
Yes. I mean, personally, when he came out with Howl, which is not really one of my favorites, but still, just the way he commanded his audience, his target audience. It's like when I read it, I'm like, holy mackerel! This was happening, 60, 70 years ago, 50s. I'm not good at numbers. So about 65 years ago, this stuff was really, it's still prevalent in today's society, but back then it was a lot worse, I think. And, he was the one to go up there and just preach. He was kind of like a preacher about it. He's like, this is what's going on, blah, 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 And, that's pretty, pretty ballsy for him to do. Excuse my French, but that's, it's something that he really took a lot of guts to do, and go out there and say, this is what I see, and, which was, I see it as a social injustice, what was going on. So, but still.
I think to me to answer the question, it's a little bit difficult, only because I think that Ginsberg is maybe seen by critics as the face of the Beat movement. I think that critically a lot of people will say, yes, he probably was, maybe the foremost Beat. But I think popularly, at least in my experience talking to people, I think when I say Beats, people always think of Kerouac. So I think that, I think that either saying yes or no, they're both right answers, because I think for me, I kind of see either. I think that
Kerouac was prose, Ginsberg was poetry.
Oh, true.
So
True.
For both, it would be 1 and 1.
True. Okay, that would actually make a lot more sense.
You also have Burroughs and the Naked Lunch.
Yeah, exactly.
The what?
So I think Burroughs, I think, is also one of those people who people know the name, and critics and people in general alike, I think, find his work very interesting. But so I guess then, I think if you break it into, just talking about poetry itself, then I would probably say that, Ginsberg is probably seen the most.
I would think that also Ginsberg was just revolutionary in the way that he said things. It was just, here's a line from Howl. With dreams, with drugs, with waking nightmares, alcohol and cock and endless balls.
To say that back then, come out and say that, it's, that would get your face smacked if you were living at home with mom and dad.
He was somebody who advocated for those that did drugs, those that engaged in rebellious actions.
I kind of think he felt bad.
Being openly gay himself, he was straightforward with the specific details for the fact that they're just everybody's the same. Even if they decide to do things differently.
I think that what you said about how the way he writes and the way he speaks is so revolutionary. I think that in many ways he is probably the most indicative of the Beat movement, in that, like exactly what you're just reading. I think all his poems and all his work in general is really like that. He just writes, and grammar isn't necessarily important, and language and self-censoring isn't necessarily important. It's how do I get across this thought right now, and in the way that I know is best possible. And so I think that is one thing that I think that's also why I love his work, because he says, I'm just going to say what's going on.
And he's not going to sugarcoat it.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say it,
That's why I think he's really...
And he'll edit his work, but he'll keep the essence of what he's trying to say.
Yes. Yeah. So I think...
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about too. Like the Ginsberg or Kerouac. Like, if you were going to take one of those two, it started out when Josh first asked the question, before we made the distinction that we were talking about poets. I thought Kerouac, because, and for personal reasons, just because he was the first of the Beats. He's who I associated with because he was the first one that I read.
And that's how I got into Beats, was through Kerouac too.
Right.
Beats all began at Ferlinghetti's City Lights Bookstore.
Well,
So
technically,
that's technically the beginning.
technically, Beats began with the vegetable.
Not even spelled the same.
I know. Oh, crud. Yeah, I know. But hey, I went for it. Okay.
Oh man, that joke is so bad I'm laughing.
Good. That's what you're supposed to do.
All right. I was going somewhere with it. Oh yeah. Because the Beats were the voice of the voiceless, right? In a time when the voiceless had no voice. I think Ginsberg would kind of more qualify in that role, being that he was willing to talk about more than Kerouac was willing to delve into. Like Kerouac, was a Catholic through it all. I mean, he had a short flirtation with Buddhists, but he died a Catholic. He was very much.
Most of them
Catholic.
were pretty somewhat censored, I would say.
Yeah, but self-censored. Like you said, like, and that's part of the great thing about the Beats too, is that they push the envelope on the issue of what is obscene and what is art, which is important, to where we are now. But to answer the question, the more I think about it, and after listening to you speak, I think Ginsberg might be more of the guy that would be the face of it, because of the fact that he was able to speak for more of the downtrodden than Kerouac may have been.
Sure. I think also what you were talking about, Kerouac. So Kerouac was Catholic, and he was Buddhist for a while, but he was always Buddhist and Catholic simultaneously, because you can, for those of you, only because I just happened to read about it. Buddhism, you don't have to renounce other religions. You can have that in tandem with another
Ginsberg
faith.
was primarily
Yeah, but
Buddhist. He
Catholicism
grew up
was not
Jewish.
allowed.
Yes, yeah. So that was very interesting. But I also think, kind of like what you said, you were like, Kerouac died a Catholic, and that he had this phase for a long period of, I don't want to say phase, but he was very heavily involved in the beat life for a long period of time. But I also think possibly some people who are like hardcore beat fans would probably be like, Kerouac was just a hipster and he quit, and Ginsberg stayed through and through his whole life.
Kerouac died early too.
Well, yeah. But I don't know. So I think that's something interesting that we could look at today, being like, people are like, you're not true to the lifestyle. I think Ginsberg is probably one of the Beats who was like, I think he was before the Beats, before the Beats got their start. I think he was a Beat, and I think he stayed that his whole life. I just think he was always kind of this interesting person.
We just say the same thing as the beat on a drum. Forget it. I'll do it for you. Just an ongoing joke.
Already, let's get right into the poems themselves. Next question. Which Ginsberg poems stick out to you the most, and why? Larry?
I'm going to say America, because God loved the working class.
It's the one Dr. Bordelon first he introduced his American Lit 2 class with, was a reading of America.
Good for him.
Giving you all and now I'm nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I like its irreverence. I like its in the way that it's proud of having communist sympathies in a time where to do so was dangerous with the McCarthyism and everything that was going on.
And to invest in something that isn't worth anything, in his mind. I think he invested in the American dream, but didn't get what he was expecting out of it.
Mm-hmm. I think another thing with that poem, which is also one of my favorites, is the ending line, "I'm putting my career shoulder to the wheel," is something that always just stood out for me, and kind of like you said, investing all this time and not getting out, and then to just be able to say, well, you know what, I'm just gonna put my shoulder to the wheel and just kind of renounce it. I think that was so cool, and like Kerouac, being a queer person, I feel like that line to me too was kind of a way of saying, as with like any marginalized group, if this nation, if this American dream isn't going to work for me, then why am I going to put this time into this country, this group, whatever, that isn't looking out for me? And so that was one thing that I think was very radical in the poem, but something that has always really stuck with me, and I think is also something that just, if any one line to me encapsulates Ginsberg, I think it's that one single line.
And what poem would you say?
Besides America, which America is also really important to me because one of my favorite musical groups is the Wonder Years, and they have an album called Suburbia, I've Given You All and Now I'm Nothing, and it's talking about their life, kind of no filter, similar to how the Beats did, but it's also a love letter to the poem America, and there's a lot of references to Ginsberg and the poem America. I mean, the name itself is basically a line. But apart from that, I also really love the poem, I think it's called In a Supermarket, or a supermarket in California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The supermarket in California.
Yes, yeah. I'm terrible with poem names.
You're fine.
That's one that's always also really stuck out to me because I just love how he talks about Whitman and kind of has this conversation with Whitman in the poem, because Whitman's another poet that was very important to me. But I also think why I kind of like that poem too is that Whitman was very sensual and had a lot of sexual imagery in his poems, but it wasn't necessarily, I feel like, it was not nearly as explicit as it is in Ginsberg, where Ginsberg's just like, I'm just going to say it like it is. But I love to see that kind of parallels between Whitman, who's, along with Emily Dickinson, oftentimes called like the greatest American poet. And I think to have Ginsberg kind of, well, first off, I guess it was in some ways pompous to draw that kind of line to Whitman. But in other ways, I think it was so cool to be able to be like, let's talk about this.
I would argue Frost, so it's something that can be argued all day.
Yeah, sure. But I think it's, for him to draw that correlation to someone who's so often held in such revere could be kind of pompous of him, but it's also a way of kind of pointing out that we live in this society where we're so repressed about sexuality oftentimes, but yet we're so obsessed with it that, like, one of the poets in this country who we think is so great had such sexual imagery, and so does Ginsberg. And so that's one thing, I think why that poem really sticks out to me, is that it's in many ways kind of calling out that, like, yes, you may think that my poems, because they're so explicit, are too much or are too subversive or whatever, but he's also saying, but look at the people who you hold in high regards, and they were doing the same thing, maybe not as explicitly as I was, but they also had this similar kind of imagery. So why do you simultaneously love it and hate it? So I love that poem does that. So that's why I really like that one as well.
Ready?
Good thoughts.
Charlie?
I'm going to say Howl as well, but also America. That, and I haven't read that one for a while, but America is a really, really good poem, and it speaks out to what you both pointed out. It's when you're crying out for help and there is no help. Is it the government? Do they care? Do they really care? Or is it this? And when I talk about Howl being, if I was to rate, not rate, but to pick one or the other, I would pick Howl because it's very blatant. It's right there. So, I mean, there's no, like I said earlier, there's no sugarcoating. This is what people were going through. And I believe Ginsberg was trying to make the social injustices known at that time. Like, why are you locking up all these people? They need the help. For example, this person needs help. They don't need to be put in jail or beaten by the police, or they need actual, and that would, that's just people with the drug problem, or whatever. Still, no matter who is in charge, I don't know how else to say it, but no matter who is in charge, usually they want this, and I don't know. I don't take any sides, but it's pressure's on right now.
I would,
But I would go with Howell.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Personally, I think Howell's my absolute favorite, and I would say that it just explores so many honest areas in such honest ways, and he doesn't sugarcoat his words.
I love sugar.
It's just incredible. When I first read it, it was, I can't believe we were assigned to read this in class.
That
Because,
was the first thing I said. I'm like,
It was,
what?
and it goes to show you the endless possibilities that literature has to offer. I also like America, and I also think that his 90s poems should get a little bit more recognition.
In the 1990s.
Newt Gingrich declares war on McGovernich counterculture. And another one, God, is just quite incredible. The way that he questions the idea. The Christians have their God, the Muslims have their God, the Mayans, the Aztecs, just all of these people. And the way that it ends, it goes as follows. I know I'm not God, are you? Don't be silly. God, everybody's God? Don't be silly. Just quite something how this idea that everybody has one God, and it's so difficult to conceive, and it's just this whole, on one hand, a bit of naivety, but on the other hand, it's something that's rightfully being questioned. And I think that it really, and with Newt Gingrich declares war on the government counterculture, it goes to show you that the issues that he was writing about in the 50s are still relevant today.
Big time.
In some way, shape, or form. Some of which are identical and others in a more evolved way.
Back
So
then
it goes to show you he was relevant up until the time he passed away in 1997.
Absolutely. I was 6 years old, 7, maybe.
And like you said, even you read his work from 50s, 60s, it still speaks to us today. So I think it shows how, and maybe that's why I like Ginsberg a lot, because a lot of poetry in general is timeless, but I think Ginsberg it's dated in some ways because, references and dates are within his poetry, but I think the essential themes of what he's talking about, what we're absolutely still dealing with today, and that we probably will be for a while.
Right.
So I think that, the relevancy of his work is not going to be diminished anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Was he a time traveler? Did he come back? Did he come to 2016 and say,
I don't think he needed to.
Yeah.
Anybody have any final thoughts?
I have two thoughts about Ginsberg. The first one is that I think one thing that Ginsberg was really kind of great at doing was just like reimagining this world in so many different ways. He talks about so many different social issues.
Police brutality is another one,
Yeah, he talked about so many things in his poetry that I don't want to list because I'm going to leave something out. But he talks about so many really important things, and I think his ultimate goal was to be able to say, we can imagine a world where we don't have to deal with these things, and where we can be free and in whatever that way that means. And I think that in that way he was really, really great at showing the utopic value of literature, of being able to say, okay, I'm going to be able to create this world in my work which is going to do society good, because by envisioning that world we get closer to having it, and now we can see how this can work. So that's one thing that I think he's done with his work that's amazing. And the only thing I want to talk about I think is so cool is I love the use of music in his work, because he has so many poems that he's written music to, that you can, when you buy like
He's
anthologies and
inspired
things.
by jazz.
Yes, yeah. As many beats were, but I just loved, I didn't realize he wrote music, and then when I first bought an anthology of his work and saw it in there, I thought it was so cool. So that's another thing. I love his integration of other art forms within his art form.
Yeah, I would say that much is true.
One of my favorite drummers, Buddy Rich, was really, and he was actually, a lot of people don't know this, but he was a nasty person at times, and he was really, I don't think he had anything to say about Allen Ginsberg, because, it was, to him, music was music. He couldn't read a note. He couldn't read a single note, but he knew if he heard a bad note, but still, horror stories and actual recordings of what he was like on the band bus, but still. And what was his thing? Jazz. So, but
I think another thing with Ginsberg and music is Bob Dylan's song "Subterranean Homesick Blues" was very Ginsberg-esque, and Ginsberg himself actually made an appearance in the video.
Yes.
And just it had to do with this revolutionary idea about the sympathy for the rebel, or those with the rebellious drug-inducing mind, whatever way that could be perceived.
Well, hey, I mean, we're founded by rebellious people. Right?
Yes,
I
we
mean,
are.
From the pilgrims who came over here, rebelling against the ideas of the church, to the rebellion against England, to the rebellion against everything else that's come down the pike ever since. In some capacity, obviously.
now let's just read. Oh no, I better not say that because I will really be in trouble.
Already done.
You know.
If you're interested in reading more Ginsberg, you can get
Oh, my
this
goodness.
collected poems from 1947 to 1997.
I want him just to read it.
I've mentioned it a few times in the Howell episode, in Beats literature episode, again in this Ginsberg episode. This
I'm in a
is-
kilt, just so you know. You
This
probably.
is a holy grail when it comes to
I think you have.
Ginsberg's poetry.
No.
Alrighty then.
Hooray.
Be sure to join us next time for another episode of Literary Gladiators. For now, keep reading.
Enjoy it.